Georgia Department of Community Affairs again. It bears repeating and thanking them for bringing us here to Georgia. To Billy Peppers in particular, you're going to see a great photo of him in just a couple minutes, so hang on. But I also want to thank Adina for hosting us at this magnificent venue. You know, one of the great things, one of the great things about being in the preservation field is you get to visit a lot of spectacular theaters, but I gotta say, this one is at the very top of my list. This is a really special place. I think it's projects like the Fox that really speak to the power of preservation to bring communities together and have a really lasting impact on their communities. I know we see stories like this all throughout our network. They're, of course, not always on this scale, but so many great examples of communities transforming themselves by rehabbing their existing and their older and historic buildings. I, in fact, have, I think, one of the best jobs out there because I get to travel around a lot and see all the great work that you all are doing. And a quick snapshot of some of my most recent tours, which I really think speak to the power and the breadth and the depth of what's going on out there. So I was in Apalachicola, Florida recently, a town that is managed, or a main street that's managed by Augusta West. And I think this is such a great example of a town that many frankly thought was sort of left for dead. And thanks to the Main Street program coming into town 3-5 years ago, they are significantly turning themselves around. This is a much more vibrant place, a place that is really able to serve both the needs of local residents and a burgeoning tourist industries. I love this project most recently in the North Broad community in New Orleans. I think it's a great reminder that we don't always need a monumental building in our Main Street to do something really special. This, as you can see, is a pretty pedestrian abandoned grocery store, but thanks to the leadership of Jeff Schultz, who's the Main Street manager there, they have taken this and turned this into a community food and health center. So they now have Whole Foods, which is the anchor, but it's so much more than that. That's right. This is a center that offers healthcare services, nutritional counseling, job training. It is, I think, a real testament to the impact that Main Street managers can have on their communities. And then there was this in Valdosta, Georgia. I've been practicing pronouncing Valdosta all week. But I was there a couple weeks ago with my husband, had a fantastic meal at this restaurant called Steel Magnolias, which I know is playing a role in the revitalization of this fabulous Main Street community right here in Georgia. This is a restaurateur, Kira Moritz, who was a chef in Atlanta and could have gone anywhere, went back home to Valdosta, opened up a restaurant. She's not done yet. She's opening up a retail establishment because she feels that passionately about her hometown and about her Main Street in particular. And Ellen Hill is doing great work down there as the Main Street manager. And then there are our friends in Gardnerville, Nevada. Now, you may know Nevada. Oh, look, we have a sign. All right, that I can actually see. Nevada is one of the few states that's never had a coordinating program, but these fine folks, Paula Lockridge and Tom Dollier in Gardnerville, Nevada, started their own Main Street program a few years back, and more than that, they are now very effectively lobbying at the state level to create a statewide program because they know Main Street helps not just them, but really would be an important asset to the rest of the state in terms of helping many other communities. So such inspiring work to see. Well, you know that time and time again, we hear about how this is the best possible moment for Main Street. There's all this energy and investment that's coming downtown, and that is absolutely true. But we also know that our work can be incredibly challenging because we live in we're working in places where there's a significant legacy of disinvestment that's sometimes decades, sometimes generation, a legacy of poverty, massive loss of jobs, brain drain, the list goes on. And yet time and time again, I am so inspired by what a small group of people can do. The people in this room, your army of volunteers outside this room in transforming your communities. It's such a special thing. I feel so privileged to be part of it. I hope you give yourselves a hand. Join me in giving yourselves a hand. All right, I want to take a moment and I want to recognize the various elements that make up this fantastic network. And I want to start with the coordinators and share a very flattering photo, which was taken yesterday. There are some very questionable things going on. Ronnie Wood in Florida, I'm not really sure what's going on with Greg Phillips in Arkansas there, but I guess the crowd can judge. Anyway, I want to take a moment and recognize you for all that you do. You are our coaches, our folks we go to for strategy and know-how, shoulders to lean on, sometimes shoulders even to cry on. I hope everyone, if you could stand, coordinators, and be recognized for all that you've done over this last year. You really need to note the relaxed position of our host, Billy Peppers, who is laying in the front row. I think that is very impressive that he can be so chilled out about this whole thing. Next, I want to move to the heart and soul of Main Street, which is our Main Street managers. And so you guys are boots on the ground, working 7 days a week, transforming your communities, making them better places in which to live, work, and play. I want to recognize all of your work over the last year, so please give yourselves a round of applause, stand and be recognized. All right, one last group that we absolutely have to recognize, and that includes our board members and our volunteers, because you all, your work really makes Main Street possible in terms of your dedication of time and resource and advocacy for these programs in your communities. So please stand and be acknowledged for all of your great contributions over this last year. All right. So I wanted to share what I think is some really terrific news with you, which is that since we started as a subsidiary of the National Trust in July of 2013, we've actually seen our membership numbers grow by 30%. Now, I want to thank you for that, for if you've joined or rejoined or are thinking about joining, for your participation in this network, because our numbers, they really matter. The size and the strength of this network really enables us to go out there and develop new partnerships, raise the visibility of your work, and develop new resources to help you do your fine work in Main Street communities. And I want to turn now, and I actually want to talk a little bit about these partnerships, and I want to talk about some of the new resources that are under development for you in your Main Street communities. So how many of you this year noticed that we were full-on partners of Small Business Saturday and joined in that effort? We were absolutely thrilled to partner with American Express for Small Business Saturday last year. Fully a third of our Main Streets participated in Small Business Saturday, which is great. We're going to be participating again, partnering again this year, and I really hope you'll join us if you did last year, or you'll step up and take this work on again this year if you didn't do it last year. This is such a great way to draw attention, to draw visibility, draw out shoppers, to support your small businesses, and also really, I think, elevate the role of Main Street within your community. So American Express is here. You've heard they're going to be sponsoring the exhibitor reception. I know they have a booth where they're giving out lots of Small Business Saturday swag, so definitely check that out and load up your bags with that good stuff. I also want to talk about another partnership we're working on that's well underway with a group called the Project for Public Spaces. And this is a group that we have some history with at Main Street. But we had a fantastic convening with them at the end of January on this topic of placemaking and integrating placemaking into our work in Main Street. So you might be wondering, well, what exactly is placemaking? Well, placemaking is really a people-centered approach to the planning, the design, and the management of public spaces. It really means engaging with your community to figure out how they want to use those public spaces and then making that happen. You might be thinking, well, this sounds a whole lot like what we do at Main Street, and you're right. I think we're actually the nation's largest network of placemakers. We just don't always think of ourselves that way or use the same vocabulary. But there are such fantastic examples all out there of the network engaging in placemaking activities, especially things that are lighter, they're quicker, they're cheaper, they have they're easy to do, but they have a really lasting impact on the community. One of my favorite examples comes to us from the Dalles, Oregon, where they created hopefully I pronounced that right, they created a little parklet outside of the ukulele store. You gotta love Oregon, the ukulele store, right? And outside of a restaurant as well. And it's just such a fun, whimsical, kind of unexpected place for people to gather. It's been wildly popular. And again, this was something that they used crowdfunding to do. It's been so popular that the Main Street program there is actually looking at how to do this in other spaces downtown. So we're very lucky because we have Kaiser Permanente as a sponsor of a general session that we're doing tomorrow on placemaking and Main Street. I really hope you'll attend. It's at 3:15 tomorrow afternoon. Fred Kent with the Project for Public Spaces is going to be our keynote speaker there, and it's going to be sharing, I hope, some really innovative ideas with you about how you can take this concept of lighter, quicker, cheaper, and take that back home and run with it and really use that to activate your main streets and really further your efforts and your work there. So again, that's tomorrow at 3:15. We have kind of a unhappy clicker, so bear with me. The final thing I wanted to talk about, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this, is the 4-point refresh, because last year, you might remember that I mentioned we were going to be taking on a reevaluation, if you will, of the 4-point approach. And I'm very pleased to say that this process is well underway, thanks to our board chair, Barbara Sidway, but also a board member who couldn't be with us today, Mary Thompson, who has been chairing this reevaluation of the 4-point approach. We're now calling it the refresh of the 4-point approach. And we've also been lucky to have two Main Street legends working on this. Kennedy Smith and Josh Bloom have been very involved in this project, doing really extensive survey work, one-on-one interviews, focus groups, talking with those both inside and outside the network to understand, how is the 4-point approach working today? Is this as effective as it possibly can be? And it may not surprise you to find out that this is the essence of what we've discovered here, which is the framework is every bit as relevant and solid, we think, as when it was rolled out 35 years ago. Every bit as relevant and solid. But we have noticed, or we did learn some interesting things in this process, and I wanted to share one of those, a couple aspects of this with you this afternoon. So the first is we reached out to managers and we asked, how are you spending your time and what do you feel the most comfortable with? What do you feel like you have the most professional qualifications for? And we found that managers are spending about twice the amount of time on promotions that they are on other aspects of downtown revitalization. And we also found that, by and large, people really were way more professionally comfortable with promotions than they were with other aspects of downtown revitalization. Well, this gives us good reason to pause, because if there's one thing we know about downtown revitalization, it's that it really has to be comprehensive. It's not enough to just focus on one aspect of breathing life into your community. You really have to approach this in a very comprehensive way. And we also know that it has to be strategic, right? Which is that everything you do as a manager really has to stem from this larger vision of what it is that your Main Street is determined to accomplish. And so the data we're seeing makes it seem like perhaps folks are having some trouble with that really comprehensive and strategic use of the 4-point approach. Well, it's interesting because I've had a couple of conversations with Main Street managers just in the last 2 months where we've talked about this phenomenon of just ending up spending so much time on events and feeling like you have very little time left for other aspects of downtown revitalization. And one of those managers comes to us from Water Valley, Mississippi, and that's, all right, and that's Mickey Rowley. And I picked the most flattering picture of Mickey I could find. So Mickey is clearly the master of the selfie, right? Here he is with Bob Wilson. These guys are looking so fierce. Like, I will not say anything mean because I'm afraid of what might happen. So, okay, but that's not true. I am gonna complain about one thing, which is that Mickey sent in a letter or a piece to the local newspaper where he mentioned that I fell off the stage last year in Detroit, and he also referred to me as young-ish, not young, but young-ish. So, despite that, Mickey, I'm gonna go on to say very good things about you. So, it gets better because up until recently, Mickey was the proud manager of something called the world's largest crappie festival. So you should let that sink in. So the largest crappie fish was caught in Water Valley, Mississippi, weighing in at 5 pounds and 3 ounces. And so I understand that Mickey was the manager of this event for several years, one-day event every year in May. And he said, he got to the point where this event was frustrating him a little bit. It was a huge outpouring of energy. He would spend months preparing for this, months burning his volunteer hours on this. He'd get to the end, it was one day, and be exhausted, and he didn't want to see anybody for a month after the event, and they didn't want to see him. And he said, I really realized this was compromising my ability to focus on the two things that I thought were more important for Water Valley. That was rehabilitating the buildings and getting people inside the buildings. So Mickey did something that I think is really courageous. He said, you know what? I'm done with the crappie event. I'm moving on. And instead, so 2013 was the last year of the event. I think, there's probably some pushback in the community, but it was a courageous and a strategic decision because in the last year, he's seen 11 of his buildings, 11 of the 100 buildings in downtown Water Valley be under rehabilitation. They've seen $3 million of investment. This is a small town of 3,000 people in rural Mississippi. That's a really significant amount of investment. And he's seeing great things and doing great things. And so I thought this was an inspiring example for all of us to hear. Now, Mickey likes to party, so he points out that he's been doing a lot of smaller events that are really easy to put together. Again, it's kind of applying the lighter, quicker, cheaper model to events. And I think that has been very successful for him. So why do I share all of this with you? Well, I do it because I want to acknowledge what the data is telling us, which is that there seems to be some discomfort, some hesitation to really embrace some of the more technical, maybe the more real estate-based aspects of downtown revitalization. And what I want you to know is, more than anything else, the center, along with your coordinating programs, are really committed to providing you with the tools and the resources you need to tackle your thorniest revitalization challenges. The 4-point refresh at its core is really about creating a framework that will help you embrace this more comprehensive, more strategic aspect to downtown revitalization. Now, we know it's not enough just to roll out this fine-tuned framework. We also really have to, and we're very committed to providing the training that goes along with that. And in fact, we took a big step towards that this morning in offering training with the National Development Council that was specifically on real estate development on Main Street. That's the first of what I hope will be many, many more training opportunities like that. I hope you avail yourselves of those. We're also bringing a certification institute back as has been talked about previously. So with that, I want to tell you to stay tuned to the center. We'll be sharing more with you about this 4-point refresh, more about training in the coming months. But again, I wanted to just commend you for all of the fantastic work you are doing. There are jobs where I know you get paid more. There are jobs where you have better hours. There are jobs where you have more glory. But you have jobs in which you are having a real impact on the lives of your community members. And that is such an important thing. It's such a powerful thing. I'm so proud to be part of it. I hope you all go out there and have a fantastic time in Atlanta. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patrice. I like that gratuitous inclusion of my own Main Street. Did I tell you that I live and work on Main Street, Baker City, Oregon? Yeah. So, well, we're, 5,000 miles away, so that's okay. It's my honor to introduce you to our keynote speaker now. Carol Coletta is the Vice President of Community and National Initiatives with the Knight Foundation. She's an expert on the development of cities and leads the Knight Foundation's incredible work to create a culture of engagement around revitalization and to support civic innovators and equitable communities. There's such a clear alignment between the work that we do here in Main Street and the mission of the Knight Foundation to support and advance a culture of engagement. And Carol, I'm so glad that you could join us today and speak to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this is the first time I've had to stand on a box, but this must be a historic podium as well because it's very tall and I'm very short. In fact, the worst day to choose to wear flat shoes. The women in the room know exactly what I mean. You start out the day and you say, what shoes am I going to wear? What do I have to do? What shoes am I going to wear? And then you figure out what you're going to put on for the day. But I have a good excuse. Yesterday I was walking all around to various destinations in downtown Miami, where I live, and wrong shoes, bad feet, so here I am. Anyway, I am really, really excited to be with you, even though I am standing on this box, because actually I used to do what many of you in this room do. I used to manage Main Street, which was a really tough assignment in the 70s in Memphis. There was no downtown renaissance in sight anywhere. So I decided I would model the behavior that we were trying to induce. And with 5 strangers, we bought and renovated an old historic building. It was an old cotton classing building. By the way, Barbara, I am carrying on the Southern tradition here. Cotton classing building. It was a block off of Main Street where I not only lived and still call that home, but opened a retail store that we operated for 7 years. So I feel like, I'm seeing my life unfold here at this conference. For almost a decade, I lived and worked on Chicago's Main Street, State Street, and now I live and work on Biscayne Boulevard, which is, I guess, Miami's Main Street, if Miami has a Main Street. And I really consider myself one of the luckiest people on earth to have spent most of my adult life on Main Street. Unfortunately, when I started in the business, I was about 30 years ahead of the demand curve. Fortunately, the world is finally catching up to the enthusiasm that you and I share for Main Street. You know the importance of what you do, right? I mean, you create the most important magnet a community has to attract the people every community most desires. You know, I'm sure that 58% of any city's success, if you consider success per capita income, can be explained by the percentage of college graduates in its population. It turns out the most mobile people in America are college-educated 25 to 34-year-olds, and a large majority of college-educated 25 to 34-year-olds say first, they choose the place they want to live. Then they look for a job. So it's also true, by the way, you should know this, that between 2000 and 2013, the number of 25 to 34-year-olds increased twice as fast in the 3-mile radius around the central business district of the 51 largest metro areas than beyond that 3-mile radius. Now, you may not live and work in a metro area, but I think the pattern holds, particularly when you look at the way people are making decisions about where they want to live. Without a strong Main Street, without an appealing center of town, a community is simply likely to miss out on the talent it should be attracting. It just won't offer the kind of product, the kind of place that talent is looking for. That's probably obvious to every one of you in this room, but we still see mayors, we see city council members, we still see business leaders who don't get it yet. So what's not so obvious, so I think the talent play that you are central to is completely obvious to those of us in the room. And I think the gospel is spreading. We're seeing chambers of commerce, we're seeing economic development officials, we're seeing mayors kind of grab on to the talent language. Talent and place are connected. You can't separate them, which is terrific for the things that we care about. I think what's not so obvious is how a strong Main Street also advances opportunity in communities. And let me tell you what I mean. There's new research from Raj Chetty's team at Harvard that shows that growing up in economically integrated neighborhoods where people of all different incomes live in close proximity to one another, results in far more upward mobility for people than does growing up in economically segregated neighborhoods. And when you think about that, I think the reason for that is pretty obvious. Poverty is tough in America, but concentrated poverty is far tougher. Concentrated poverty intensifies all of the negative things that we associate with poverty: poor schools, poor job options, poor networks. One of our greatest challenges in America is how to get people of different incomes to live in close proximity to one another so that they can share more of the public and the private realm together on a daily basis. It's not happening today. In fact, if anything, we're moving in the opposite direction, the wrong direction in America. We have far more census tracts where there is concentrated poverty today than we did in 1970. Now, look, we obviously cannot compel rich people and poor people to live near one another. We can't compel rich people and poor people to send their kids to the same schools. We tried that in the 60s, it didn't work. So I think the real question may be, how do we make it delightful for people of different incomes to live close to one another? How do we make it an obvious value add to their lives to share their lives, to share public space? I think if we can crack that one, we can unlock economic opportunity for Americans. And the most likely place to crack it is on Main Street. It's on Main Street because Main Street belongs to everyone. It's the neutral ground. And further, our economy now depends on innovation. Innovation depends on creativity, and creativity depends on bringing people together with different points of view, different experiences, different backgrounds, combining their differences to make something new. Now, the most creative companies hire for that diversity. The most creative cities provide places and spaces that attract people with that diversity, with those differences. And that place ought to be Main Street. Never, ever let politicians or neighborhood activists pit Main Street or downtown against neighborhoods. That is such a false choice. We need both, and we especially need that neutral ground that Main Street represents, that ground that no one claims as only theirs, but everyone can claim as theirs. That's really important. You know, I've talked about what an important accelerator Main Street can be to the key city success ingredients, talent and opportunity. But there's one more city success ingredient for which Main Streets, I believe, play a key role, and it's been referred to today, and that ingredient is engagement. I work at the Knight Foundation. Knight Foundation is the legacy of Clara Knight and Jack and Jim Knight, who built a chain of successful newspapers. The foundation is built on the belief that informed and engaged communities are essential for a strong democracy. Now, as befits their legacy, we've spent a lot of time at the foundation and made a lot of grants in service to engagement. and trying to understand what that really means. How many of you, although it's hard to see, have participated in a public engagement process? Oh yeah, all the masochists in the room just raised their hands. Yeah. The experience of public engagement to me is sort of what engagement shouldn't be. Yet those engagement processes, you know this, as you're involved in them, you probably are required to do certain ones of them. They're codified by law, so there's a 3-minute requisite, public comment period in every public meeting. Architects and planners have to have their engagement specialists on their teams. Apps developers have had a field day with their attempts to induce civic engagement with smartphones, and we've funded a lot of that. Yet the rate of voting in local elections is plummeting in America. We've just completed at night a set of focus groups with millennials around the country, asking them, these were millennials actually who vote in national elections but fall off or do not vote in local elections. And it was so clear that they don't see voting in local elections as a way to express their values, nor do they see local government as a way to get things done. Patrice, where are you? You're talking about lighter, faster, cheaper. I think one of the real values of tactical urbanism and those things is to help people see results in short order, but it's not enough, and it's not enough. We agree on that. I think the fact that people don't see local government as a way to express their values, as a way to get things done in a democracy is very troubling. And it's also troubling, I think, because the future of our communities is crowdsourced. It's about what we believe about the future and how we see our role in it and how we act on those beliefs that actually creates then the future. At night, we're exploring how cities can create a robust culture of engagement. Specifically, we're exploring how places can be designed and operated and programmed to encourage more robust engagement. We believe that the places we inhabit every day are far more powerful way to stimulate a culture of engagement than any process, any event, or any app will ever be. So, if a strong Main Street accelerates talent, accelerates opportunity, and accelerates engagement in uniquely powerful ways, then how do we strengthen Main Streets? Well, that's the work you do every day, and it's a little bit presumptuous of me to make any recommendations. I don't do this work on a daily basis like you do, but at the risk of sounding presumptuous, I am going to offer up 3 recommendations. 3 recommendations that I hope that you'll find helpful. First, look at the places that are attracting the most talented people today. Core cities, the CBD, the neighborhoods surrounding the CBD, and I gave you those stats earlier. What are the qualities of core cities that are attracting talented people? What are the things that those core cities have that other parts of the city frequently don't have? I think it's typically mixed income, mixed use, walkable, bikeable, transit-served neighborhoods. They are they have 24/7 activity. They enjoy a robust civic commons. They have lots of options about things to do. And the neighbors are typically more diverse in those places. Now, those are all characteristics of a good downtown. And they're all characteristics that are attracting talented people today. But I think too often downtowns or Main Streets sort of, maybe out of lack of knowledge, I think mostly out of lack of confidence, turn their backs and don't insist on those urban qualities. I see it certainly in my neighborhood. Too often there's still pressure for downtown to suburbanize, to offer too much parking. That's a problem in most cities. To let big boxes, whether it's a big hotel or a big format grocery store, create a a block of blank walls and dead space, or to make streets too wide and too fast. Another concern, Wu is right. As the number of residents increase, sometimes they start acting like they've moved into a suburban residential neighborhood. There's nothing wrong with a suburban residential neighborhood. I'm all for that. That's a good option. That option exists in every community in America. A good downtown does not. I'll just make that point. But they start acting like they moved into a suburban residential neighborhood, and they start complaining about the traffic or the noise. And you're listening to someone who just came off a 3-day ultra EDM festival right across the street from me. You know what EDM is, right? Yes, electronic dance music. It was spectacular, but it was loud. But, look, I chose to live in a downtown. I chose to move across from that park, and that's part of it. It really ought to be part of the joy of living downtown. It's the diversity. So my advice to you is resist. Resist the temptation to suburbanize or to lean out from urbanism. The best main streets, just like the best companies, embrace diversity. On the streets, in your programming, in your tenant mix, in the demographic you attempt to attract, and in the price points you offer. There's nothing easy about managing diversity. I know that. But if Main Street doesn't excel at offering diversity, I think it fails at everything else. Second, Main Street should offer a vibrant public life. You've talked about this. In America, look, we've demonstrated in modern times that we know how to gather people predictably around shopping. We do that at shopping malls. And that's part of life on Main Street. That's a good part of life on Main Street. But it is not, nor should it be, the whole of life on Main Street. I think we need to dig much more deeply into how to create a predictably appealing public life or civic life on Main Street. At night, I was telling Daryl earlier, we're exploring that in a couple of ways. In fact, thanks to his encouragement, thank you, Daryl, with Gale Studios, we're looking at how streets and sidewalks and public spaces can be repurposed for a broader set of uses and thereby work harder, work more efficiently, and be more predictably appealing. We think there's a science there. I think, Daryl, you do too. I think there's a science there, and we're going to be publishing our findings frequently over the next 24 months. So watch for that at knightfoundation.org if it's something you're interested in. I think we want to be a resource to you, and we want to make the streets and public spaces in America much more vibrant. We've also launched an initiative that we call Reimagining the Civic Commons, where we're exploring the hidden potential of that set of civic assets that all of our cities have, the libraries, the parks, the schoolyards, the trails, the recreation centers, the vacant school buildings that are today, many of which today are aging, they're misaligned with today's consumer interests, they're disconnected to one another, they're not really served by technology, don't have terribly inventive programming. We believe that, again, this represents, just like streets that are underused or single-purpose streets and sidewalks, we believe this represents a real opportunity for capturing new value for our cities if we can do a better job of rethinking those assets, reinvesting in them, reimagining them, augmenting them with technology, and getting them to collaborate with one another, getting them to operate not as a set of siloed assets, but instead a connected, a networked set of assets together. I think there's a lot of potential there. We have a demonstration project going on in Philadelphia to see what will happen when we reinvest in them and support them and connect them together. And that Philadelphia demonstration happens to be situated in a set of neighborhoods that essentially surround the the center city in Philadelphia, but it would be really interesting to us to do a second demonstration with a collection of civic assets that are situated in a downtown. So if you know of a place we should be working, I hope you'll see me at the reception, because we have other funders interested in being part of this collaboration, and that's exciting to us. One of the ways in which main streets, I think, are different from shopping malls is in their very civicness, their civic character. Their civic assets and public space are the most important expressions of that civic character, which is why they deserve love and attention and investment. So, 2 recommendations. Let me make one more and I'll stop. And that is to be intentional about the way your Main Street can accelerate talent, opportunity, and engagement. I think these things don't just happen. I think you really have to be intentional. And I'm convinced that Main Street has a very special role to play in accelerating these key success ingredients for cities. And I would ask you that for every decision that you're called upon to make about your Main Street, that you ask yourself just 3 questions. Will this decision increase talent in our cities? Will this decision increase opportunity in our city? And will this decision increase civic engagement in our city? Your work in so many ways shapes the success of your city. Increasingly, it's hard to imagine a successful city without a successful Main Street. And that's why gatherings like this one are so important, and it's the reason your work is so important. Make the most of it, because we're all depending on you to succeed. Thanks.
Thank you so much. That was a truly inspirational series of remarks, and we look forward to continuing that conversation. And now, I'm happy to introduce you all to my colleague and good buddy, Irv Henderson, who is going to announce this year's Great American Main Street Awards. And I know you're looking forward to that. Irvin is a fellow board member of the National Main Street Center and is the board chair of the National Trust Community Investment Corporation. And in his real life, he's the principal of Henderson and Company in Henderson, North Carolina, a consulting firm and development company with expertise in community, commercial, residential, and enterprise development. He is a passionate advocate for Main Streets and can think of no better person than Irv to present our GAMSA Awards.
Good afternoon, Main Streeters. Carol, I may need your box. Each year, the National Main Street Center recognizes exceptional Main Street communities whose successes serve as a model for comprehensive preservation-based commercial district revitalization. These award-winning communities demonstrate exemplary achievement in the process of strengthening their downtowns and commercial districts. Now, this year's semifinalists showcase the diversity of Main Streets across the country with both younger and more established, large and small programs represented. I'd like to take a moment to recognize these 10 communities, including Beaufort, South Carolina, Cape Girardeau, Missouri, Columbus, Georgia, Dahlonega, Georgia, Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, Lititz, Pennsylvania, Marion, Virginia, Milford, Delaware, Montclair, New Jersey, and Rollins, Wyoming. Give yourself another hand. Together, these communities have generated over $54 million in public-private reinvestment in 2013, while creating 491 new jobs and opening 126 new businesses. Give them a hand for that. These are exceptional Main Street programs. But before announcing this year's 3 Great American Main Street Award winners, I'd like to introduce a community that we think you should keep an eye on. A new award category that we launched last year, the One to Watch Award, recognizes exceptional communities working on very innovative projects that are poised on the cusp of a major transformation. They exemplify the idea that any great Main Street is an ever-evolving work in progress and offer inspiration for fledgling Main Streets and long-standing Main Street groups alike. Without further ado, I'd like to start by presenting this year's One to Watch Award to Fond du Lac. So we've invited Downtown Fond du Lac Partnership Executive Director Amy Hansen and her team up on stage to accept this award, and we have them now. Let's give her another hand. Now to the GAMSA winners. I'd like to announce the winners of this year's Great American Main Street Awards. We saw a wide range of entries this year, and we're truly impressed with the hard work you're doing in Main Streets across America. It was a very difficult task to just choose 3. The award winners range from a town of 9,000 that's located as far as 100 miles from the nearest city, to a town of 37,000 that's just 13 miles from one of the biggest cities in the country. What they have in common, however, is a community that's dedicated to the continual process of revitalization. They've brought businesses back downtown, they've added housing, they've preserved the historic touches that make each community so unique. And they are not done yet. Each one of these communities has a lot of exciting projects, and we expect many more great things to come in the future. And now, on to the announcement that you've all been waiting for. I'd like to present the first award to Old Town Cape Incorporated of Cape Girardeau, Missouri.
Walk through gates and see the river. They just did all because they've never seen anything like that. And then when they go up to a restaurant, say, and have lunch and find out all the history of that building, dating back to the Civil War, that's intriguing to people. You can't just go build that. You have to keep it.
I think the 4-point approach, the Main Street approach, really gives us a structure, and it gives us a way to focus.
We've done a lot of work. We've got a lot of things to see, a lot of people living here, new businesses, so it's revitalized.
But we know that to support all that and to sustain that we need people living down here, people who can engage in those activities, who can shop those shops, who will be here 24 hours a day to really be a part of it. Vasterling Suites was a great project for us, and it brought us, in the end, 24 units. We worked with the new property owners before they bought the property.
In the downtown area, there's not a bunch of living where you could just walk to the mom and pop shops, and we were excited when we saw this shell that we could just do something new with.
They tap in to those people that they know that they could bring to take that building, not just to rehab, but also who's going to go in that building as a tenant when it's done.
We've had 27 new businesses over a year that came in, and resulted in about 58 new jobs. Over the last 5 years, the vacancy has dropped significantly.
Everybody wants to own a small business, but it's very difficult. So if you can develop a team And my team includes Old Town Cape.
My strategy is mostly just to help individual businesses that want to locate downtown have the resources they need.
When you can buy things that you can't just get anywhere, I think that adds a richness and a texture to our lives. Prior to Old Town Cape's organization, most people avoided downtown.
It was a little depressing. There were a lot of empty buildings, a lot of empty storefronts.
The downtown merchants had done a remarkable job fighting the decentralization of retail, but they weren't getting new business. Eventually everybody was going to die and there'd be nobody left. And the turnaround that we've seen is in the young people. And you realize this town has life. This town is going to be here for another generation.
The whole Main Street program, the philosophy, they have really captured that.
Federal Courthouse left. It was vacant for several years, has a new property owner. It's being adaptively used.
And the biggest reason that they got the building is because of a business called Codify.
Well, Codify is a co-working space and technology incubator where creative, entrepreneurial people have a place to come and connect.
Codify will really create new entrepreneurs. I think they'll choose downtown.
The great things that the downtown organizations can do is they just connect us.
It's a volunteer effort, a board of directors that is not only a governing board, but they're a working board.
And I think what we've come to is just to put some money in the budget to really show appreciation to the more committed volunteers, the committees, and that sort of thing.
Everybody knows what the vision is for downtown. They know the direction that they want to go, that they need to go for economic success. It's not over. They're not going to rest on their laurels here. Success is going to continue to happen because it's the people that makes this community.
I credit Marla, the board, really from the national organization down to our local folks for being the spearhead of what's really going to make this community a place that people like me who aren't from here want to spend a long time.
And now, I'd like to invite Marla Mills, Executive Director of Old Town Cape, and community members to the stage. Founded in 1999, a population of 37,941, they've opened 27 new businesses, resulting in 58 new jobs from July 2013 to June 2014. They also will be receiving the award for the most ambassadors. I'm very pleased now to present the second Great American Main Street Award of the evening to Montclair Center Bid of Montclair, New Jersey.
Montclair Center is a destination. It's a place where people can come and have dinner, they can shop, they can just enjoy their afternoon walking around. There's a lot to do. We've got museums, movie theaters, shops, restaurants, all sorts of stuff you can do.
We work closely with New Jersey Main Street and National Main Street to apply the four-point approach to everything downtown. And frankly, we could not be happier.
Art institutions are really key for Montclair Center. You have the Wellmont Theater, you have the Montclair Arts Center, then you have Montclair Center being effectively the restaurant capital of New Jersey.
We have 85 fine dining establishments representing 16 different cuisines. One of the more famous is right behind me is Raymond's.
We've just sort of grown up with the town in a way. We've been here for 25 years. There are so many ethnic restaurants represented, and they're good ones.
In terms of diversity, quality, range, and creativity, Montclair Center's restaurant niche is extremely strong.
It's exciting. There's always something to do.
We've been voted for the last few years as New Jersey's favorite downtown arts district. And by promoting a strength, arts, we're able to piggyback on that image to help and boost residents, office, and retail.
Montclair Center has been really excellent at addressing the quality of life issues initially, and then growing towards business recruitment and business retention.
The Montclair bid was extremely welcoming to us.
From an exposure standpoint, we get exposure because of the events that they host. And they benefit because we bring energy, we bring a new life into the town.
People are coming to Montclair. I started here in 1988. Back then, this area was a little rough, a lot of crime. You would rarely see people walking around at night.
The downtown was largely neglected. There were piles of trash, and the vacancy rate in the 1990s was approximately 50%. Since then, vacancy is down to about 10%.
They've been able to take this downtown from being left for dead to what it is today.
Now it's like New York City. It's Friday night, Saturday night when the restaurants are open. We even stay open till like 11, 12 o'clock at night on a Friday. It's fantastic.
Once we got Main Street Religion, we found that the simultaneous application of organization, design, economic restructuring, and PR magnified our results.
The culture of Montclair Center is to adaptively reuse, where possible, the historic fabric of the district and then to promote the heck out of it.
We're blessed with several landlords who recognize the creative economy.
If you have creative office space available, you are going to attract a creative business class. This beautifully architecturally designed building was built in 1926.
They saved this historic church and they gave it an office function that was award-winning in the state of New Jersey.
The church was on the market. They decided to sell. We approached the board and said, you know what? Why don't you stay in your home of 85 years? We'll build you a new sanctuary and we'll turn the rest of it into boutique office space, and off we went.
Pretty much every building in the downtown is a mixed-use building. Residential demand for downtown Montclair is high.
I actually live upstairs in the Wilmot Theater.
In the past 3 months, as I was looking for a place, my primary destination was to look for somewhere that I can legitimately skate to work or walk to work with a coffee in hand.
Downtowns are living, organic, breathing things. There's a constant reinvention, and that's part of the fun of this. There's always something fresh and different.
And now I'd like to invite Luther Flurry, Executive Director of Montclair Center Bid, and community members to the stage. Founded in 2002, a population of 37,669, Montclair Bid. Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Great work. Congratulations. Great work. Congratulations.
And finally, I'd like to present our final 2015 Gamza Award to Rollins DDA of Rollins, Wyoming.
In 1997, you could have shot a cannon down Cedar Street and not hit anybody. So I think that it was the perfect timing to become a Main Street community, to become part of the Wyoming Main Street family.
What Main Street has done in Rollins is really gotten everybody excited and energized about the community. People started seeing, if we work together, look what we can get done. They have a huge volunteer source here.
Volunteers are the backbone of this program. Last year, we had over 7,000 hours in volunteer time.
Pam's great at rounding up volunteers. She delegates well, and she's taught us how to delegate too.
The DDA Main Street is a great success story, and the thousands of hours that those folks put in, that is one of those priceless things.
When they decided to purchase